The Happy Warrior Podcast. Conservative commentary on the news of the day from a more positive perspective.
Our planet is going to face disaster if we ship around. And so it's basically like there's scientific consensus that the lives of children are going to be very difficult. And it does lead, I think, young people to have a legitimate question. You know, is it okay to still have children? And I mean, not just financially, because people are graduating with $20, $30, $100,000 worth of student loan debt, and so they can't even afford to have kids in a house, but also just this basic moral question, like, what do we do? And even if you don't have kids, there are still children here in the world, and we have a moral obligation to them, to leave a better world for them. And this idea that if we just, you know, I've been working on this for X amount of years, it's like not good enough. Like, we need a universal sense of urgency, and people are trying to like introduce watered down proposals that are frankly going to kill us.
Hello, everyone. I am Happy Warrior Pete. This here is the Happy Warrior Podcast, and that before you was the incorrigible, the amazing, the great enlightened one, otherwise known as Democrat Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or AOC, as all the cool kids on the interwebs like to call her. And that, my friends, is an incredible piece of audio. And that is where I'd like to get started today. But before we do, I'd like to remind you that please follow us on the social medias. We do Facebook, we do Twitter, we do Minds.com, and you can find us Happy Warrior Pete on Minds.com. It's Happy Warrior Pete on Facebook, but it's Happy Warrior Pete on Twitter. Please follow, like, and subscribe to us. Definitely check out all three. And if you don't have a Minds.com account, you should get one. It's going to be the next big social media craze. I'm telling you, I'm feeling it. Joe Rogan's on it. Tim Pool of the Timcast is on it. This thing is going to be big. So you have to jump right in. Join us. A relative of mine, my kind uncle, he's going to help us to pay the $20 a month so I can become a verified account, which is nice. It's nice that Minds lets you do that, because it's almost impossible to become verified with Twitter. I mean, you're in a very long line. You kind of had to be in it from the beginning to get in, or be a certain teenager that speaks out about gun control. But that's besides the point. Let's talk about AOC. See, I remember. This is probably circa 2011. I was working on my bachelor's through South Dakota State University, and I was taking an English course. And at the end of this English course, they want us to do this project. You do a project. It's a long, argumentative essay where you argue about some giant research project. And I did DNA engineering to treat infesting pests, or pests that infest woods where they're not supposed to. Like we have up here, we have the emerald ash borer. That was what I wanted to talk about. Mine was long hours, lots of research, well put together. Anyhow, before I go on to give my presentation, because you not only have to write this thing, you have to do a presentation. A lady comes up, and she basically gives the PowerPoint version of The Day After Tomorrow, the terrible 2004 film about global warming. And if you remember, in that movie, a helicopter actually freezes in the air and crashes down. There's a part where they had to burn all these books at the library because the global warming has caused it to get so cold, so very cold, that the only way they can stay alive is if they burn all the books, and they'd be right next to the fire. And it was just a ridiculous movie. I mean, it was terrible. It's still a ridiculous movie. But here was the thing. She gave her presentation, and naively, I'm like 20, 21 at the time, I say, bull crap. I don't say it, but that's it was a load of junk, and everyone's clapping. Oh, you're so wonderful. The professor's like, that was very insightful. And I'm like, what are you talking about? All the science she put was bunk. I doubt that she put all that much effort into the research or the work, and I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And no one would back me up. They all like, Peter, What's your problem? Peter, what's your problem? And I says, look, guys, that's not how global warming works. Helicopters are not just going to freeze and fall onto the ground because of global warming. And they're like, so? No, they didn't say so. There was like, no, you're wrong. You're wrong. No, I'm not. You're wrong. This was the professor, by the way, leading this. I got so ticked off. I stormed out, and I didn't even come back to give the presentation. I was so frustrated, so very frustrated, because it was this movie plot that was being peddled as a science project, and everyone believed it. And it was less about that the person did the project. It was more about, we are telling me that IMDb summary of The Day After Tomorrow is reality. And it's obvious that it's not. And that was what made me so angry and so upset. I wish I'd given that presentation. It would have bumped me to the A that I deserved, but unfortunately, I only got B, so that was my fault. But it was when I first realized that all the craziness that we see in movies, we see on television, we see in the news, about you pick any environmental issue you want, they believe it. Very many people really do believe it. Yeah, you have a disclaimer. You know, like at the BBC, they have to have a disclaimer with Al Gore's movie An Inconvenient Truth. That's ignored. They don't care. They just believe what is being sold to them. Now, I'm going to say there are plenty of people that don't. There are smart people that don't. But I'm going to tell you the ones that aren't so smart, or just the ones who don't want to do the research and don't really care, and will just take their word for it. Buy into it. And that was almost 10 years ago, 9 years ago. And fast forward, and now we have AOC. AOC is telling us, people, global climate change. Remember, we're no longer global warming, we're now global climate change. Totally different. Global climate change is awesome because you could get it wrong every time and you'll always still be right. And she's telling you, don't have kids because everyone will be dead in 12 years. We'll all be dead. It'll be Mad Max, apocalypse. It'd be immoral to bring kids in this world that are just going to die because there's no food, and they're going to be forced to fight in a giant Thunderdome, and then there'll be this weird albino bald guy driving everywhere with a British accent for no really described reason. It'll be crazy. And they buy into this. And this, by the way, she did on, what is it? The one I don't like to use much. Instagram. She did this on Instagram, and she had millions upon millions of views. For the actual live stream, it was 984,000 views, it says on it. And this thing just went viral. And she's there, she's chopping up her squash, and she just says it so matter-of-factly. Oh, you know, it's immoral to do this because all those children are going to die. And you know what? This is really, really bad. Now, what else did she say in there that I want you guys to point out? And I learned this from listening to Jonah Goldberg. By the way, Jonah Goldberg, if you're listening, thank you for the retweets. I heard about your new company. You know, if I'm always willing and interested, looking for new opportunities. Anyhow, she said, and a key word in here, and you guys need to learn this, urgency. She said urgency. Urgency is the great secret to any great government overreach. Okay? Let me put it this way. And this is a bigger idea. It's called the moral equivalent of war. But I'll cut this up so you can understand it. Governments can get away with things that they otherwise can't if the issue is an emergency and it's urgent. Best example is war. Okay, what we did during World War I, what we did during World War II, would never be tolerated in peacetime. You know, all the civilians' rights are thrown out the window. The Constitution makes a little room for this. Abraham Lincoln, during the Civil War, you know, he threw a lot of people's rights under the bus, and we had to win this war. There was a real sense of urgency, so it justifies, you know, throwing people in prison without due process. Urgency allows you to do things you never would be able to do. The progressive movement in the late 1800s, that 19th century to the smarter girls and gals, had this idea, and he called it the moral equivalent of war. Look, we got to find war, because war is awesome, but we need to find a war that doesn't have all that bloody bits, okay? We need to find war that's no violence, okay, maybe a little bit of violence, but, it's not killing people, because war allows you to do things that we dream of that you otherwise cannot get to happen. Okay, this idea, again, it's called the moral equivalent of war. If you want to learn about the subject, a great book to read is Liberal Fascism by Jonah Goldberg, and he talks about this idea really well. Think of all the countries that had great changes and how they got away with it. Think about the Nazis. The Nazis want to invade Poland. So what do? The Nazis create this giant PR machine, and it pops out and it shows all these videos to the German people. Look at these poor Germans being abused by the Polish. Oh, look at those poor Germans. Oh, they're being abused and starved and mistreated. Nazi Germany, the Rhineland must come to the rescue. Save its children from the mean, evil Poles. Okay, they created a sense of urgency that gave them the excuse, at least in their eyes, to come in, take over Poland. And they repeated this several times. As, they took another country here, a little country over there. We took, Holland here, Poland there, Austria there. That's what they did. You can go to all kinds of dictators that is. And we've had things that are kind of similar to this, even in peacetime. The Great Depression was built on the machine that Woodrow Wilson made in the 1910s, where during World War I. And at the Great Depression, the New Deal group had all been trained during Woodrow Wilson's time. Woodrow Wilson was a monster in so many ways. I mean, he should be universally despised and well-deserving of it. A racist, warmonger, just a horrible, horrible human being. Anyhow, they skirt people's rights all the time under Woodrow Wilson. German people are thrown in this, kind of like the Japanese concentration camps that we had here in America. There was like a brigade. I'm trying to think of their name. It's not coming to me, but basically there's this peacetime brigade that worked for the Woodrow Wilson administration that would go to these beer halls and town halls and just give these like 3-minute speeches, 5-minute speeches. And then, they would try to tell people, if you're not supporting the war, you're a crowd or whatever. You could get, and it got so bad to a point that there were a couple of cases where a man, they would say, time for the Pledge of Allegiance, and a man would stand up and the crowd would bludgeon him to death. And then no one was charged. Okay, so urgency can create the most amazing and terrible things in human insight. And think about how humans think. Okay, this is how it is at my house, right? Cleaning is it's been an off and on thing that I've been okay at. And growing up, I'm sure many of you do this too. We don't really clean tons until, we're having someone's coming over to visit. In the LDS Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we had something called home teachers. They have a different name now. And we're like, oh no, shoot, the home teachers are going to be here. Everyone, quick. And so we'd all be cleaning, and my mom, who would lead us, might be a little more energetic than normal. And, this would be tolerated because they're going to be here right away. This is time to be urgent. This is time to make this thing happen. Urgency is the great thing. And so you have a very dangerous formula we're setting up here, guys. AOC says 12 years, we're all going to be dead, entering Mad Max, so don't have babies. And she says this is urgent. And that's why we don't do piecemeal measures. And this is why we don't put watered down legislation. We need the Green New Deal. We need the full hot tamale. We don't just do it bit by bit. We do the whole elephant. That old saying, how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. We don't do the one bite at a time. We just do the whole elephant, open wide. That's what she is selling here. And this is incredible because the people on the left, and it's true on the right, by the way, there is this kind of sense of, we're losing, things are awful. Some of the stuff with immigration kind of gets this feel too. this sense of, oh no, we're all in danger. So Donald Trump, it's okay if he does an emergency order, signs a terrible bill, and steals money from all kinds of pots that legally he's not allowed to, because this is an emergency. Okay, I'm trying to be fair. The Happy Warrior is fair. Think about this. Think about this. This is now. Some of you maybe saw this clip. If not, I will summarize it for you real quick. So Dianne Feinstein, the 83-year-old, I want to say senator from California, was in her office, and this group made up of tweens and teenagers came in, and they just gas and yell and scream and beg, oh, we're all going to die. Oh, we're all going to die. Why aren't you doing something? Why aren't you doing something? We're America's future. Why aren't you doing something? It's just kind of funny because usually it's the adults are saying, these are America's future. It's the children themselves. We are the future. Serve us.
We are trying to ask you to vote yes on the Green New Deal.
Please.
Okay, I'll tell you what. We have our own Green New Deal.
Some scientists have said that we have 12 years to turn this around.
Well, it's not going to get turned around in 10 years. What we can do,
Senator, if this doesn't get turned around in 10 years, you're looking at the faces of the people who are going to be living with these consequences.
The government is supposed to be for the people and by the people and all for the people.
You know what's interesting about this group is I've been doing this for 30 years. I know what I'm doing. You come in here and you say it has to be my way or the highway. I don't respond to that. I've gotten elected. I just ran. I was elected by almost 1 million vote plurality. And I know what I'm doing. So, maybe people should listen a little bit.
I hear what you're saying, but we're the people who voted you. You're supposed to listen to us. That's your
How old are you?
job.
How old
I'm
are
16.
You?
I
well,
can't
you didn't
vote.
vote for me.
Well, I'm 24.
It doesn't matter. We're the ones who's going to be impacted.
Something.
It doesn't matter. We're going to be the ones who are impacted.
So there you go, guys. You're Hitler Youth in training. I mean, it's that same kind of thing, right? We're going to recruit the children for propaganda. I mean, wow, that is really awful. I love Dianne Feinstein's, how old are you? Well, I'm 16, so I can't vote. Well, then you didn't vote for me. Get out of here. Get out of my office, you kids. Oh, man. I normally don't like Feinstein. This is like the second or third time in the last year where I'm like, way to go, Dianne Feinstein, because that's how crazy things have gotten. Oh, man, it's really painful. Now, is there any truth whatsoever then 12 years, this is things we can't turn around. We're all going to die. Best case of their argument is, well, 12 years, no, we're not all going to die, but this will mean we can't turn it back. Say 100, and it all comes at us. I'm trying to be fair. Does any of us actually believe that? No. I mean, for many reasons. One, we can't stop it because America's only 15% of greenhouse gas emissions. India and China and Russia have much more. Well, not some actually, yes, they have more than us. Not per capita, but they have more than us. And we have no control over them to make them stop. I mean, it was only till just yesterday that China stopped dumping all our recycling in their ocean. So, yeah, these countries do not give a dang. Look up the smog in Beijing. Okay, you could eat it with a spoon. It's that thick. Is that awful? A wonderful toxic spoon. I have a great story about Russia and its colorful, Magi color snow. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's like a Crayola product. It's incredible. It's incredible. But you hear those kids. Goodness gracious, they believe it. And sadly, very many children do. And this is the problem. Okay, if you're a kid, think about where you're getting all your... Okay, so you can get news, one, from mom and dad, right? Maybe they're conservative. Maybe they're not. Doesn't matter. Just hear me out. Okay, but who else is the next person to teach them? Well, they go to school. They're teachers. Okay, we know that there are schools where there are no conservative or Republican teachers at all. At the university level especially, but at elementary level too. So that's where they're going to be taught. They're going to be taught all this stuff, and the teacher's going to believe at least half of it, and they're not going to get any pushback. So that's where that's where a big part in. Or they happen to watch television movies. Well, the television movies say that this is urgent. Or they watch, maybe they, for some reason, they're with their parents and they're watching the 6 o'clock news, right? And that's going to say, no, we're all going to die. And so they buy into there too. So many kids buy into this. And I think in the United States of America, that's become the default. Seriously, I do. That is the default. You know, and I was this way with me as a kid. You know, they do the Arbor Day. When all the trees are being burned, there will be no rainforest in 3 days. Because a bajillion acres are burned every day. 100,000 million acres are burned every day. Every day. And so I got so silly. My brothers and I were like, okay, we'll plant as many trees we can. So like we like shook trees around us, like maple trees, and planted all the seeds and made a huge mess of our yard. I mean, it just got silly because I bought into this, and many kids do. And this has been a big problem in many conservative families that I've known over the years. It's a problem in my family where, yeah, mom and dad say that, but they don't really know. Like, they're just kind of stupid. You know, I had my Aunt Jealous. It's this great story. For the longest time, her oldest didn't believe she could read, okay? And she was like, she read to her every night, you know, forever. And they're a big reading family. I mean, they've read Dickens, all kinds of pretty lengthy books. And these are not, I mean, these are little kids that she's reading it to. Like, I think they read Gulliver's Travels. I mean, it's hefty stuff. Anyhow, and she did not believe that her mom could read. And they were like, what are you talking about? And then, so Julius would read. It was like, oh, and she just pity. Julius would, oh, that's right, Mom. Good job. Like Julia Majalis is making up the words. Fantastic. And he's like, Mom, maybe we should let Dad read the story tonight. Oh my gosh. Well, it's like that, right? They don't buy into it. The kids don't. And those kids, they grow up and we call them millennials. They're me. They're my generation and below. Okay, a little above my generation, but take that and go below. Okay? And they buy into this. They really do. This is the default position, okay? If this is the factory settings, it's crazy. You know, the Washington Street Journal, by the way, if one of you wants to give me access to your Washington Street Journal subscription, I'd be much obliged because I cannot find a way to get these articles without actually purchasing a subscription. So they had this amazing editorial written by Grace Marie Turner. She's president of the Galen Institute. She's worked and spoke at Harvard, London School of Economics, Oxford, the Vatican, yada, yada, yada. Very prestigious journalist and professor. And she came out with this amazing quote. I'll just read the whole quote. Okay, this is about what they say about AOC and here we go. The tragedy is that Miss Ocasio-Cortez has little regard for the system that made it possible for her to be elected to Congress, gain extraordinary influence, have access to millions of dollars to pay staff at a living wage of at least $52,000 a year, so generous is she with taxpayer money, and now with a standard of living far above what her old job could have provided. She leads a generation of young people to take pride in their ignorance of the laws of nature, of history, of the Constitution, of the eternal battle for freedom, and still succeed. That last sentence sums up the problem in a nutshell. And to be fair to AOC, there would be some other person. AOC is kind of like Trump. Like, you have this environment, you're going to get someone like a Trump. You're going to get someone like an AOC. And it's completely true. You know, I didn't realize at the time, but there was a ton of political bias in high school and elementary school and middle school. I had a history teacher, and this is when I was just starting to have my political awakening. No, I was a senior, and she wanted to talk about how, you know, the Soviet Union was really all that bad. They told us it was all awful, but, you know, they were no different than us. And it was actually pretty good and better there in a lot of ways. And I didn't know better. I couldn't say, you're crazy. I mean, people were killing to get out of that country. You know, it's like Cuba. People are getting on a little rowboat, one of those duck boats with the paddles. They're grabbing barrels, anything they can to get out of there. No, it was even better. in some ways. Just crazy. I mean, this is the same teacher when she asked, well, what do you think of assimilation? I said, well, because it looked like an honest question. You know, what do you think about assimilation? Could it work? It actually was rhetorical. And I was like, well, I think it could work as long as we treat people fairly and we don't force them and we reward them and encourage them. She's like, Peter, assimilation can never work. I don't even remember the rest of it. It made me so angry at the time. I was like, what are you talking about? She was a prophet, man. She all this stuff was coming in the future. And this is where we're at. AOC represents this idea. And she is selling the moral equivalent of war, baby. Either she believes in it, which some have said, and she's crazy, or if I have said that maybe she does believe in it, but it's more about the realpolitik. It's about political power, you know, where Bismarck throws in all the socialist policies to undercut the actual Socialist Party, and all the glory goes to him. Bismarck was a very interesting character and kind of screwed us in a whole lot of ways, but that was the idea. I seriously think AOC could be a lot smarter than she appears. I mean, there's an asteroid. Their story came out about an asteroid named after her because she won second place in an national science fair, and so asteroid was named after her, the Ocasio-Cortez. And yeah, she's a lot. She's a lot. I mean, she went to Boston University and had a double master's, for crying out loud. I really do believe she's smarter than people give her credit. You know, I could go on about the environment. Like the guy, one of the founders of Greenpeace is like, you are so ignorant. You're so stupid. You have no idea how this is going to work. You're going to get everybody killed. You know, if we ban fossil fuels, we're just going to burn all the trees for heat. Which, by the way, he's right. But here's the other thing about AOC, and this is the other problem with urgency. Urgency can squash dissent better than anything else. And this is what AOC did. And I turned to Kevin Williamson, and he calls this the corrosion of conformity. So there was this bill that came out over last week, and it was through the Democrat House, and it was this big gun bill. Now, it had no power whatsoever to ever come to pass because, you know, the Senate's not going to vote for it, and the president, even if it got through the Senate, there's no way in heck the president's going to sign it. You'd hope. So some of the Republicans thought it'd be funny if we insert a poison pill. And we'll say, okay, so you have all this stuff that makes it impossible to, you know, if you want to sell your brother a gun, you first have to go to a gun dealership and has to go through all the proper paperwork to get approved. And the Republicans put it in, okay, well, when they do that and they find it's illegal immigrant, they have to report that. And this caused the Democrats to go friggin' bananas. Particularly AOC and the leadership. So it gets a little bit Mussolini-like here. So I'm just going to read from Splinter, which never saw Democrat policy it didn't want to swallow and worship and wear as a skin. They said they had this private door meeting after the vote where 24 moderate Democrats voted for the bill. Okay, these guys come from red states. These are people that have been elected as centrists because they said, we're not the crazy ones. We're in the middle. We're the centrists. And they're like, we were signing it because we're centrists. Okay, we're moderates. We're sort of conservative Democrats in the most stretchy version of the word conservative. And Pelosi was very mad with this. Quote, what is this? She said, according to one aides. One lawmaker told Pelosi about the peril of persistently voting with party leaders on these motions. Pelosi responded, we have a massive mass operation. Frankly, it should be there for all those who have the courage to vote. See, Pelosi's like, don't worry. If they don't like you, we have a great operation. We're gonna make it okay. Okay, this is what a sane person, more uplifting, positive, upbeat. This is what a happy warrior would do. This is not good for AOC. No, AOC becomes the dragon, okay? But Ocasio-Cortez, the unquestioned media superstar of the freshman class, up to the ante, admonishing the moderates and indicating she would help liberal activists unseat them in the 2012 election. Corbin Trent, a spokesman for Ocasio-Cortez, said she told her colleagues and this is a quote, are putting themselves on a list. She said that when activists ask her why she had to vote for a gun safety bill that also furthers empowers an agency that forcibly ejects kids with psychotropic drugs, they're going to want a list of names, and she's going to give it to them. There you go. That's scary stuff. Scary stuff. And she's alleging, and I'm not going to go into it here, but she's pushing a new narrative we're seeing with ICE. The ICE is a bunch of rapists and child molesters. Ignore the fact that they spend much of their time fighting gangs and white supremacists. No, they're just a bunch of child molesters. And again, I speak to that idea of urgency. And this is the thing. You better get in the beep line, okay? It's either my way or the highway, as Steinem said. And this is what they want. This is what's coming down the alley, guys. This is coming up the freeway, and it's at a fever pitch. This is what they're going to say when they get power. And this is why emergency declarations, even this executive order for free speech ecologists to some degree, is just making it easier for these people who say, we're all going to die in 12 years. Thus, it justifies whatever the flip we want it to. Okay? Green New Deal, whatever. We want to put balloons on the backside of all the cows. So we don't let any of that nasty methane out. Okay? We'll do it. That's what's coming our way, because these are people that are saying we're all going to die. Okay, they teach children, and the children, they're marching along in their swastikas. They're like, yes, we're all going to die. We're all going to die. Save us. We're the future. Coming down the track. And of course, the media is hardly going to be pushed back. There was someone that pushed back on this, by the way, and I'm going to show them a bit. This is what's coming our way, guys. This is what's coming our way, and it legitimately scares me. It really does, because this is what happens. This is how you get dictators, okay? This is how we end up with a situation not dissimilar to Venezuela and Cuba. Italy and the Soviet Union. Well, maybe not the Soviet Union, but Italy, yes. We're setting up where we need a strong man more than ever, and they are justified to do whatever they want because it is that awful. Now, there is a word for this idea. This word where we force what we want because we just have to. There's a word for this when we force what we want at the cost of everyone else's civil liberties. It's an Orwellian word. It begins with a T. Some people call this totalitarianism, a.k.a. dictatorship. Now, surprisingly, a guy that I would not have expected to come out against AOC was brave, and I will give him credit. I've not always been a fan of Fareed Zakaria, but he was awesome here. Now, it's a long clip from CNN. It's about 4 minutes, so I cut a little over half out of it. So I'll play the clip, and then there'll be a little beep to let you know that's where I made the edit, but you get the gist of it. I'll include in the article, the outline, the show notes, in case you want to hear the full piece of audio yourself.
It's refreshing to see the party bubbling with new ideas. But its new thinking seems starkly different from the party's reform efforts of the past 3 decades. The wonky proposals of the Clinton-Obama era were pragmatic and incremental, and they mixed market incentives with government action. Today we have big, dramatic, stirring ideas, and that could be the problem. In their zeal to match the sweeping rhetoric of right-wing populism, Democrats are spinning out dramatic proposals indeed, but in which facts are sometimes misrepresented, the numbers occasionally don't add up, and emotional appeal tends to trump actual policy analysis. When Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was confronted recently by Anderson Cooper on 60 Minutes about an egregious misstatement about Pentagon spending, she responded,
I think that there's a lot of people more concerned about being precisely, factually, and semantically correct than about being morally right.
Perhaps this casual attitude towards facts explains the way that she and many others on the left have misrepresented the deal that New York offered Amazon to bring a new headquarters there. But again, this is less stirring stuff than burning the billionaires. AOC's comments on 60 Minutes reminded me of a July 2016 exchange between Newt Gingrich and CNN's Alison Camerota.
Violent crime across the country is down. This is the FBI statistics. They're not a liberal organization.
No,
they're a crime.
What I said is equally true. People feel more threatened.
Yes, they feel it, but the facts don't support it.
As a political candidate, I'll go with how people feel, and I'll let you go with the theoreticians.
We already have one major political party that now routinely twists facts, disregards evidence, ignores serious policy analysis, and just makes stuff up to appeal to people's emotions and prejudices. If the Democrats now start moving along this path as well, American politics will truly descend into a new dark age.
So there you have it. Fareed Zakaria on CNN summed it up perfectly. He and Newt Gingrich. People feel frightened, particularly on the left, but on the right too. And that allows our leaders to do things that really they just shouldn't be doing. This is why cool heads must prevail, because if we don't have our cool heads, we are so much more easy. We're so much more easily manipulated. And our freedoms are so much more easily crushed. It is so important that you try to have a cool head. Yes, we have big problems. We have big problems. But in so many ways, America is better today than it's ever been. More people are at peace. There are less wars right now than ever before in human history. There are more people not living in poverty than ever before in human history. There are great polls that are showing that more Americans are self-identifying as being pro-life than they have since ever, as far as I know. So things are good in so many ways, and the blessings and freedoms we have, we are going to lose if we allow the hotheads, if we be hotheads and then allow people like AOC to take control. Now, am I saying that AOC is directly Hitler? No. But someone that is Hitlerian in the idea that they're a strong man and that they will take over and that they will crush civil liberties. Am I saying it's going to be concentration camps? No. Am I going to say that we will set up our own kind of American dictator? Or at the very least, we'll be encroaching further and further forward to make that more likely? Yes. And this is why we need to be careful. And this is why also I should add, educate your family. Gosh darn it, you need to make sure that your kids understand how the world really is. And they understand that we are not all going to die in 12 years due to global climate change. I was about to say global warming, but it's not that. It's global climate change, completely different. Crazy. All right, well, I'm going to play a 30-second bit of audio. Take a break, come back, and I want to talk about social media today. I want to talk about the press. I want to talk about banks. Very exciting banking. All this and more on the wonderful Happy Warrior Podcast.
What's on? How it's flown, trembling with long, and time still rolling on, and the party's beat goes on. Don't tell me what you want, don't tell me what you need, don't tell me what you want, don't tell me what you need. No more, no more, no more, no more.
So, you guys who have been with me for a while now on the podcast know that I am a bit of an Anglophile. I love Doctor Who. I absolutely adore it, particularly Big Finish's run. Their stuff is just mind-blowing. And I've always kind of wondered, about this in my head. This study came out. It's about Peppa Pig. Hey, Peppa. Hello. I'm Peppa Pig. Okay, it's about Peppa Pig. It's a kid's show. It's from Britain. It's one of the few British kids shows that is not horrendous. I mean, some of their shows look like Kaleidoscope Nightmare. I mean, scary stuff. Not as bad as the Mexican or Russian animation, kids CGI 3D animation, but bad. Peppa Pig is all right. Peppa Pig is okay, and it's a pleasant, it's a peaceful little show. I don't mind Peppa Pig. It's kind of cute. Well, the study found, and they call it the Peppa effect, U.S. kids who watch Peppa Pig develop slight British accents, and I want this for my kid. If I ever have a kid, this needs to happen. Yes, the show, which was banned in China because this is a long ago episode. They talk about the Peppa Pig gangster attitudes. Peppa Pig is a gangster. It's a gangster culture thing in China, which is fantastic. And while another episode in Australia was pulled because it didn't teach kids to be afraid of spiders. Yes, I know. Well, apparently, and this was reported in the Evening Standard, kids that watch Peppa Pig all day learn to speak with an ever so slight British accent. And instead of complaining, American parents are actually saying that they find this quite cute. They like it. The Peppa effect. The Peppa effect. As one woman on Twitter said, "Yay, I can vouch for the Peppa effect in our house. Taylor absolutely lapses into a slight Brit accent and vocabulary and uses the word straight away more than I have ever heard in my life. Daddy, when we get home, do I have to go to bed straight away?" Another Twitter user says his 7-year-old son refers to vacation as, quote, going on holiday, thanks to Peppa Pig. This is what I want. This is what I need. I need this. I want this. I almost wish this is what my mom had done. I wish old Peppa Pig didn't exist, but, somehow. Because America, having a British accent is like a huge plus. I mean, you have to have the right. You can't have, sweeping time. You can't have gutter snipe, Dick Van Dyke accent. That doesn't go. But if you have the Southern London accent, here today on the news, we are the BBC. Okay, which is there's an interesting history. That's not even a real accent. Charlie Cook talks about this, where he's like, this was an accent that people wanted to cover up that they came from somewhere else in England. You don't want to be the guy with the Yorkshire accent. I don't know if that was Yorkshire. Anyhow, or the Welsh accent, UK. So this covered it up nicely. And very interesting. By the way, Charlie Cook is another of these writers I enjoy. He's up on the list. He's up on the list. National Review has so many good writers. So many good writers. Yeah, so this is called the Peppa Pig effect. So I don't really want to go too much into media bias again. I've talked about that up the old elephant's wazoo. That's been said. But let's talk about what's going on in the world of social media. What is because there's a lot of news about social media. I kind of want to go. We'll start here with Project Veritas. They came out this last week, February 27th. Facebook insider leaks docs, explains deboosting, troll report, and political targeting on video interview. And in the video, this is a crazy, crazy document. Let's break it down. So in the interview, he talks with an insider that was working with Facebook's content review in the Facebook intellectual department. Since then, he has lost his job. But he worked into 2018. He says it was part of his job was to demote bad content. He had to decide what was good content, what was bad content, and demote what was bad content. However, much of that bad content was conservative Facebook pages and conservative things. Louder with Crowder, by the way, is one of the examples he cites. And so they would go even into the live streams and they would deboost. Deboost, that's an awesome euphemism. No, they'd kick it so they would be harder to watch. They'd even have it where they'd make it so that if they're trying to do a live stream, they'll just have outages on the Crowder side and also the viewer side, just random outages, just errors, refresh. And they would make it harder for people to see what was going on. Now, they never told Louder with Crowder, Steven Crowder's outfit. They never told him. They never told people that you were deboosted. They would often make this classification Even just by what your vocabulary is, what words, terms you like to do. The pages that use a term like progressive, SJW, if they say mob, if they say, left-wing crazy, then that would be a page that they would want to limit the bandwidth, block comments, and do it without the page owners ever knowing. He says that they would label this hateful content, and the hateful content was almost always from right-leaning websites. They said that this all kicked in, the special features section, all kicked in leading up to important elections. And he says that, he was, one day he's looking through all this, and he sees this term. He says this term, it's called deboosting. He says deboosted. And it was for a conservative page. And so he got curious. So he looked at a couple of others. He saw, I think one of the other, what's another example here? Mike Cernovich's Facebook page. And again, it had this tag, deboosted. And a lot of these conservative pages had deboosted. And this is what they're alleging. They have some documents, by the way, that shows this. They're saying that this is something that Facebook does. And they treat this almost as if if a conservative outfit like Louder with Crowder, they almost treat it as if it's one of these people that sell fake news or one of these people that promote suicide or violence. Now, none of this should surprise any of you if you've listened to my previous episodes covering Facebook and Twitter and what Silicon Valley is doing to conservatives. I've shared this story before. In 2018, when Facebook made all sorts of changes to their algorithm in protest of the 2016 election, the traffic for websites, conservative websites, decreased dramatically. One of the examples I have here, and this is through Gateway Pundit, they have a wonderful summary of this, was the website Western Journal. So from 2016, and in 2016 it had more than 1 billion page views a year, okay? From 2016 and on, it went from 1 billion to less than 250 million page views. It lost 75% of its Facebook traffic. And then, so they follow this up. So they talked to person clicked media. This was another one of these groups. Same thing. Went to another one. 100% fed up. This is another Facebook page that all led to media stuff. Again, they said Gateway Pundit told. Gateway Pundit was told the organization Click Media hosted over 60 conservative websites. They lost 400 million page views from Facebook in the last 6 months compared to the traffic a year earlier. And this, unfortunately, caused many media outfits to close. And there's this wonderful map from the Columbia Journalism Review, CJR, which is a pretty prestigious journalist organization. And they have, you see the influence map. These are like what imprint the websites have. In 2016, there are more big blue blobs. Okay. You got 1, 2, 3, 4 big blue blobs. Washington Post is one. New York Times is the biggest. CNN's a big one. Huffington Post. And then you have smaller, but still somewhat significant, like 2 or 3 red ones. Breitbart, I think, is one of them. I want to say the Blaze. It's kind of hard to read. Now you jump to 2017, and the map shows you all the ones that are eliminated, and it's insane. There are no more big blue blobs. Yes, some of the websites are around, but they are just tiny, tiny dots, and the blue ones are just as big. It's an amazing map, by the way. It's so cool to see this stuff turned into visual information. This is what's going on. James O'Keefe and his group Project Veritas have several times now shown that Facebook, Twitter, and Google, which is YouTube as well, are cutting conservatives off their platforms. They are throttling them. They are keeping traffic that otherwise they used to get away from them. You know, in some ways, I think I've been seeing this with my own Facebook page, but I have no proof. See, until we get this Project Veritas stuff, there was no proof. It was hardly going on. It was mostly allegations, but now we have real evidence to show it. One of the funny things we talked about before, Facebook wanted to do this content moderator, which would have, a group It was like less than 100 people we meet every week. No, it was like 20 people. And they meet every week, and they make new rules, and they send this booklet out. And they would have 15,000 people would have to daily look at the billions and literally billions of Facebook posts every day. And it was ridiculous. How can you expect people, 15,000, to look over a billion? And even worse, most of those were in English. They weren't in their native tongues of the areas. There was some people that would cover it, but there's just so too many languages. And so people would actually be using Google Translate to cover them. So you have to cover, say and I don't know if this is for certain, you're Canadian and you have to look over Vietnam, and so you have to look at the post, and then you have to copy it, paste to Google, search Google Translate, and you kind of have to try to rough estimate. And you do this without knowing the culture. You do this without knowing the context. Well, these two reports came out about what actually it's like to be one of these content moderators. Okay, and it's scary as hell. So basically, if I had to sum it up in one word, you know those cops whose full-time job is to catch child pornographers, and so they see all day, every day, the most vile, evil, wicked stuff on the internet? Yeah, they're doing that, except they get none of the benefits. They make about $25,000 a year, and there's very little job security, and they don't get potty breaks. They hardly get any potty breaks. It's like the very worst version of that job ever. And there were two versions of this, one by Vanity Fair, one by The Verge. The Verge one was so good. The Vanity Fair one was very misandrist. It was obsessed with this idea, talking about punishing men, make sure that men are punished, and it was just weird. Don't read the Vanity Fair piece, but do read The Verge. If you have time and you kind of want to know what it's like to be a Facebook content moderator, read it. It's fascinating. And these people, when they're in training, have to look at graphic pornography. They have to look at murders and stabbings and rapes and everything awful. And they have very little training to do it. And yes, they do a therapist on the staff, but they aren't really there to help the employees out. And once you lose your job, you no longer get any help or insight. Okay, like the cops get help, right? They have medical plans and pensions, and they're supposed to get continued therapy. Not so for these people. And they don't even get full Facebook company benefits because they're hired out through a vendor called Cognizant, which is like Cog and then Cognizant, but with a Z. And it's crazy. And they said that they get so bad, this messes up the people that do this, that almost all of them are doing drugs on their breaks so that it stunts their emotions so they can handle the job. They said that people were having sex in the stairwells, people were having sex in the mother lactating room. People were doing all kinds of crazy things. And they call this was happening because it's called trauma bonding. This is what happened to soldiers in the battlefield. That when you're through a terrible, horrific, awful thing, you become really close really fast to certain people. It's one of these ancient tribal mechanisms that's in us. And that's what's happening to these people. And even crazier, they would also be reading all these conspiracy theories, flat eartherism, the idea that 9/11 is a conspiracy. Another example is the Holocaust. And they started to actually believe that after they're doing this, they said some of them started to believe that, yeah, the earth was flat. And one said, yeah, I now question certain aspects of the Holocaust. And just very, very, very sad. Really, really sad. I mean, it's funny. It's funny that they're reading the conspiracy theorists and it kind of gets on them. But it's very, very sad. I mean, it really messes people up. They talk to some of these employees that a year or more have left this company and they still have terrible PTSD from it. I mean, it's a ridiculous system. I mean, it's like... Here, I'm just going to read some of the way the content moderating works, okay? This is just ridiculous. From the article from The Verge. Miguel diligently applies the policy, even though he tells me it often makes no sense to him. A post calling someone my favorite N-word is allowed to stay up because under the policy is considered explicitly positive content. Another one, autistic people should be sterilized, seems offensive to him, but it stays up as well because autism is, quote, not a protected characteristic, quote, unquote, the way race and gender are, and so it doesn't violate the policy. men should be sterilized would be taken down. It used to be, I hate all men would violate the policy. However, if you wrote, I just broke up with my boyfriend and I hate all men, it no longer does. You know, it's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. I mean, some of this stuff is really graphic. This is not for kids to read, by the way. Maybe not even teenagers. It's really, really quite disturbing on multiple levels. Very disturbing. The way these people are treated is awful. What they actually have to do for a living is awful. The system that they have to work under is horribly managed. They just don't have the support even to try to attempt to work like this. It's amazing. It is amazing. Amazing article from The Verge. What's it titled? You guys should read this if you have time. It's kind of long, but it's worth it. It's called The Trauma Floor: The Secret Lives of Facebook Moderators in America. Here's some other things that are going on. See, China now, I've talked about this, China has now fully implemented the social credit system. It's like 30 million people in just over the last 6 months have been blocked from getting train tickets, getting loans, etc., etc. It's already in force. Well, here's a scary thing, though. Because our Silicon Valley companies want to play nice with China, they are now stopping speech from our side so it doesn't affect their side. An example of this is the YouTuber Lao Y86. He's a cool dude. He has cool videos. He's a white guy, speaks Chinese. He's been on YouTube a long time, by the way. And he would just do these videos, him with his Chinese wife and half Chinese kids, and they would just share what life is like in China from day to day. Well, lately, he had some critical comments about China. Not just him, but some of the people he'd interview. And now YouTube disabled comments on all his videos. And it sounds like he's moving. He is moving. I think he's moving to the States. And his channel is pretty much done. And it's awful. And Google is doing this. At the same time, Google is closing things for China to play nice with China. Google is refusing to remove an app. And this is for Saudi Arabia. Okay, for all you lefties that were so mad at Trump last year about the Saudi stuff, and Khashoggi, everyone's favorite terrorist journalist, what about this? Google refuses to remove controversial women tracking app in Saudi Arabia. It's called the Abshur app, and it allows male guardians to control a woman's travel. Yes, it's a little 1984 for him for her. Or, you know, it's a little bit of Orwell, just a little bit of Orwell on your phone. Just know wherever she goes, you know, restrict her travel, all kinds of wonderful features, such as paying parking fines, registering a birth, or renewing a driver's license. But one feature that created an outcry from human rights campaigners is the ability for men to track and either permit or deny traveling plans made by women. Wonderful. And Google's not pulling it. And the Congress has even written to them, what the fetch, guys? And Google's like, we're not pulling it. Apple, as of yet, has yet to respond. And this version of the article came out today. So as of the time I'm recording this, March the 3rd, it's still up. It's still there, guys. Well, what are some wonderful other examples? Well, this is a fantastic thing. YouTube, which is owned by Google, though, is in a lot of hot water, and it's not because of the civil rights issue. It's because YouTube was essentially a giant kiddie porn machine. Not intentionally, but the way the algorithms work was they will give you what you want. So if you watch one kind of video, a certain category video a lot, the algorithm learns very quickly what you like and will give you more of it. Well, these people, these adults that are into pedophilia, disgusting, would look at videos with kids, like a little girl doing gymnastics, and maybe you could see her underwear at some point or something like that. And then they would link these videos in comments, and they created basically this web ring where you go from video to video to video, and they were saying the most vile stuff. This YouTuber, who, by the way, was no Me Too blushing rose. I mean, the guy that pointed this out initially, Matt Watson, is the one that pointed this out, and it went viral. And it's this pornography ring. It's not pornography, exactly. It's on the edge, but it's definitely egregious. Really egregious. Just awful. And it caused everyone and their mother and her dog to pull out of YouTube for advertising. Disney, AT&T, even Epic Games, who makes Fortnite, say, we are no longer doing advertising. Well, this made a response. YouTube then banned commenting on all videos involving children. And, just some things that maybe mention children, maybe not. It's pretty loosey-goosey over there. They're pretty quick with a ban hammer. And they've fixed some accounts, but as of now, a lot of these companies still have not come back. And this opened up a door because then people were saying, well, what else is YouTube doing awful? Because YouTube, for a very long time, has had these messed up children apps. This is what I tell all my family members. Do not let your kids watch YouTube alone. It's not safe. The YouTube Kids app is awful because there are these people making these awful videos that will have characters like Elsa and Spider-Man in them. And they'll get pregnant, and they'll say nasty words. It's just really bizarre, nightmare-looking scenarios, the most bizarre thing. And they do it because it makes the algorithm happy. And the kids click a thing, I love Frozen. And there's Spider-Man and Elsa knocked up. So, just bizarre stuff. Really, really weird. And YouTube also has a bit of a violence problem. This is another thing that they're saying that YouTube has. And so it's crazy over there. YouTube is just trying to plug the holes in the ship. And there's a lot of them. I mean, it hit an iceberg. It's pretty bad. YouTube actually has for a year, 2 years. I don't know if this is true. So this is more hearsay. Has been not as nice to people for making money because advertisers have not been sticking with it. They just don't see the investment. It's kind of like the stuff with journalism where the investors thought they could make money on journalism, and it turns out it's pretty hard. So what's going to happen to this? I don't know. YouTube is going to try to clean up shop. I hope they figure it out because, YouTube is popular. And so many people will just want to trust YouTube Kids. Because, this is completely safe. Google advertises this is safe for kids. And it's just crazy. Of course, though, this also had the side effect of a lot of people are getting the ban hammer, not being able to make money, not being able to have comments. It's just a gigantic mess. Okay, so I talked about Google. I talked about Facebook. Well, who else deserves to be talked about? Let's talk about Twitter. Let's talk about Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. So Tommy Robinson, the founder of the English Defense League, who left because he felt it was full of white supremacy. Tommy Robinson's an interesting guy. He's this activist reporter, sort of. He's done some good things. His reporting on the Muslim rape gangs, that was good job. His politics and how he sets people up for these interviews like with the BBC, I'm kind of mixed. I'm not sure that's great. But anyhow, he has been labeled an evil, hateful guy. And the Labour Party and the BBC have been pushing for him to get banned. And even Wired UK, and I tweeted about this, Wired UK saying, Tommy Robinson got banned by Facebook and Instagram. Who should be banning him next? And people here in the US, very few are willing to come out and say, don't do this. This is just like what Robert and I talked about on Alex Jones. There are very few people that are willing to stick their necks out and say, we got to stand up for our civil rights. We have to stand up for our right to expression and right to speech. You may not like what he says, but I will defend to the death his right to say it, as the saying that's supposedly said to Voltaire, which I love. I know there's some people that are like, he didn't really mean it, and, the speech does have some limits, right? Because technically child pornography is speech, and don't allow that. Okay, fine. Semantics aside, in general, we allow people to speak their mind, especially when it's controversial. That's what's happening. And Facebook and Instagram banned him. I think YouTube banned him. He was already banned by Twitter. They say his crime, why he got banned, was because he talked with the Proud Boys and Gavin McInnes. He has offered praise or support for these hate figures and groups. I'm quoting an article from The Guardian. He used hate speech to target a specific group. I know, it's very specific, isn't it? It calls for violence against people based on race, ethnicity, or national origin. Okay, I don't believe that last one. That's baloney. Tommy Robinson isn't great. I'm not defending him. But I am saying let him speak. And I think with a figure big as Tommy Robinson, this is kind of what happens to Alex Jones. This just lights the fire underneath them, because then people are even more quick to defend and donate. And I think it just boosts his fame. In fact, Alex Jones was just on the Joe Rogan podcast for an amazing 3 hours, I would like to add. Alex Jones, as far as I understand, is as big as he ever was. Now, the people that get hurt by these bans are like me. These are the people that are starting up. These are the people who are in the middle. You know, people who maybe don't have a lot of resources. They get stifled. And it also stifles people from being willing to put their toes in the water. You know, they don't want to get into it because they'll just be banned. They can't say what they want to say. So what's the point? They call this, by the way, that idea is called the chilling of speech, right? You freeze things, but you make the general environment so it's colder, less things happen. You know, if you think of molecules and how they vibrate at a certain frequency, if you're in the microwave and it heats up, it vibrates faster. If you cool it down, it vibrates slower. So think of that. So it chills everything, chills free speech, chills people willing to say what they want to say, what they really believe. Now, governments can screw things up too, and the European Union, ever to prove that Brexit is a good idea, is finalizing their copyright rule. And I've reported on this before, and I reported on that this was going to make it impossible for anyone really to operate as a company and as a user, because you don't have the equipment to verify. They want to verify every single thing that goes online and make sure it's not copyrighted. And if it's copyrighted at all, like it's a GIF of Aladdin, you know, that's owned by Disney. You can't do that. It just makes the internet, how it works, why it works, stops it. Well, I'm just going to quote from the Electronic Freedom Foundation. Here's their text. Here's a little bit about the law. It says, under the final text, any online community, platform, or service that existed for 3 or more years or makes £10 million or more is responsible for ensuring that no user ever posts anything that infringes copyright, even momentarily. This is impossible. And the closest any service can come is to spending hundreds of millions of euros to develop automated copyright filters. These filters would subject all communications of every European to interception and arbitrary censorship of a black box algorithm, decides their text, pictures, sound, or videos are a match for known copyright work. They are a gift to fraudsters and criminals, say nothing of censors, both government and private. These filters are going to be unaffordable. No one will be able to afford them except the very biggest companies. It's insane. It really is crazy. And this would also, I mean, this has other effects. Like, this is going to choose which news sites are legitimate or not. This is going to have a terrible effect on anyone that wants to get into the internet business in Europe. This stops all Creative Commons license use. So even if you're like, anyone can use my stuff, I'm Disney, and I declare from here on out, you can do whatever you want with a mouse. Whatever you want with Mickey, you can do. Well, that still wouldn't be good, because you still have to, under the law, have these filters and stop it. Which, that's... What? What? This, I mean, come on. I mean, if you ever wanted an excuse to prove that Brexit is completely correct, if you were like, Brexit was the greatest act of democracy, you know, that the British people have ever had since the Glorious Revolution, that would be it. Yeah, that would be it. When this is just a mess. This really is a mess. I hope this does not happen. Man, bureaucrats are awesome, aren't they? Just flipping-tastic. So yeah, if you enjoy the internet and you live in France, too bad. Man, this is gonna stifle innovation like crazy. Europe shouldn't do this. I mean, even from a foreign policy standard, this is gonna put Europe behind China in a way like any other. I mean, goodness gracious. This is so bad. This is so bad. This is just one more reason why I'm against the European Union. Because any system that you don't have any control over and you don't have any recourse over, and you can't say, this is stupid, okay? you have to be able to, as the Constitution say, you have a right to redress your grievances. Well, if you can't do that, then essentially you just have this dictator that you're lorded over. And it doesn't matter if it's just one guy and it's by divine right, or if it's a bunch of bureaucrats hanging out in Brussels. All right, well, before I get going, please be sure to rate and review us on iTunes. That makes a big world of difference. And you can always follow me on the social medias, which is Happy Warrior Pete on Facebook and Minds.com. And just Happy Warrior Pete on Twitter. This week, Jonah Goldberg retweeted me not once, but 2 times, which I am just so gosh darn proud of. That was awesome. Thank you, Jonah, for doing that. I hope he's a listener. I hope Michael Knowles. Now we had John Ziegler. We got the El Flash. We're going to add Jonah Goldberg to the mix. It's going to be fantastic. But please, check us out on the social media and be sure to rate and review. All right, going to take a quick break. Be right back for a minute.
Down by the riverside, gonna lay down my sword and shield. Down by the riverside, study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. I'm gonna put on my long white robe down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna put on my long white robe down by the riverside and study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more, ain't gonna study war no more, ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more, ain't gonna study war no more, ain't gonna study war no more. I'm gonna walk with the Prince of Peace down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna walk with the Prince of Peace down by the riverside and study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more, ain't gonna study war no more, ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more, ain't gonna study war no more, ain't gonna study war no more.
All right, there we go. I enjoyed that. That was fun. I played the whole thing. I just like that song. It's fun. It's fun, and it's free, and that is the very best price of all. I want to talk about something completely different. I want to talk about Terry Crews. He's an amazing black actor. He's in a bunch of comedies and action movies. He's fantastic. He is also actually a pretty brave man. In a bunch of ways, but particularly this. So the New York Times, Barack Obama is no longer, well, he's sort of cool in some circles, but in a lot of circles, he's no longer cool. And one of the things he's in big trouble is, well, I'll just read the headline from the New York Times. Why does Obama scold black boys? And so during the early time of Barack Obama, and even recently, he talks about, this, I'll do my Obama my impression. If you're really confident about your financial situation, you're probably not going to be wearing an 8-pound chain around your neck. Because oh, I got a bank account. I don't have to show you how much I got. I feel good. He was talking about that black children, black boys in particular, don't need to prove to everyone in the world that they're worth something because they have money. They don't need bling. Your character speaks for you. And I agree with President Obama on this. He is exactly right. But the New York Times did not like this. They did not like this at all. They felt he was scolding them and he was being mean and selfish. This is part of a problematic practice, calling out black children for having ghetto names like mine or wearing Air Jordans. The name of the person is Derica Purnell. By the way, President Obama never said anything about names. It wasn't about having a certain name. That was ridiculous. Such remarks by Mr. Obama reflect his administration's failure, and to an extent that of my brother's keeper. That's a program Obama is pushing these days, to tackle the systematic inequality that shapes black people's lives in America. It's so ridiculous. This New York Times piece. I went to Harvard Law School decades after Mr. Obama and his wife Michelle graduated. When I was there in 2014, nobody wore thick gold chains to show off their wealth. They wore thin ones to match their David Yorman bracelets. Oh, it's just silly. It's taking it completely out of context. He knew, she knew, I don't know. Derica, so probably of she. She knew exactly what he was trying to say. Anyhow, so this comes out. Terry Crews is willing to speak up, okay? He's willing to speak up. He says, if a successful black man can't advise the black male youth of the next generation, who will? His answer is, the street. That's who. Why does Obama scold black boys? Question mark. And another thing that bothers me about this op-ed was written by a woman about how black boys should be taught to grow into successful young men. How would she know? Men need to hold other men accountable. You can speak with us, just not for us. There is a big difference. Terry Crews, and this is he did not let it go. And this came up some more, and okay. So here's the last thing he said about it. He says there are things a person can only get from their mother, but there are also things a person can only get from their father. I would never render either unnecessary. And if you think you're missing one, you need a good representation of either or in your life. I want to go back to this clip of audio, so I'm just going to play a minute of it. This is 2014, right? But Terry Crews is speaking about fatherhood. He's on The View. Poor man. And I'm just going to list the three. He says this, and then there's this giant pushback, but he doesn't let go, and he fights back for it. But I just wanted you to hear his 3 points about why a man needs a dad in his life. It's incredible audio. Everyone needs to hear this, not just black boys, but every boy, every man.
I understand you have some strong views of fatherhood.
Yes, so, I do.
Please, take the floor.
I gotta say, I posted some things on social media, and people got angry at me. And what I said was that there are some things that only a father can give you, okay? Now, people went, wait, my mama gave me all that. I said, hold up. And this is what I believe. I believe this from my heart. You know, we care more about organic food than we do organic people. There are things that you need from your father. Your father starts out, he gives you your name. He gives you, listen.
Like in Lion King?
Like in Lion King? If you ever watched Lion King, it happened. He gives you your name. He tells you, yes, he tells you who you are. That is the point. And the second thing he gives you is your inheritance. Now, that doesn't mean money. You inherit his story. You understand what I'm saying? When you have an inheritance, it's more than that. It's your father's story. Whatever your father was, whatever belongs to you. The third thing that your father gives you is your security. And what I mean, and I'm not talking about just, protection and the whole thing, which it does include. I'm talking about your confidence. Because when your father tells you can do something, you believe you can do it. That's the truth.
Wow, wasn't that amazing? Wow, it's so sad that today is controversial. It is sad, speaking as a man who grew up in a single-parent household, I didn't realize until I was in my 20s how much I had missed out by not having a dad in my life. There were, one of the things like boundaries. Like, I even struggle somewhat, how much is too much affection? What is the right kind of affection? What are the boundaries on it? When you're dealing, especially with other men, about strength, about being stoic, about handling tough feelings, about dealing with conflict resolutions, about having confidence in yourself. These are things that I still struggle with at some level. I was blessed with an amazing grandpa, my mom's dad. I was blessed with close friends that were mentors to me. You know, Robert, in some ways, is this to me. He sets great example for me all the time. A really amazing man. Yeah, you guys don't know it, but Robert Mehling, who owns and runs the Sioux Empire Podcast Network, is a man of very high integrity. And I've been very impressed to know him. I'm very grateful for that relationship. Boys need men in their lives. I mean, moms are great, and I love my mom to pieces. But dads are something different. You need both. You need both. You know, I think that's part of that is why I'm against this push for the universal pre-K. It's this idea that we can just swap out what you learn from your mom and your dad with just any old person. And just any old organization, any old person, they'll just get the job done. It's this idea that we don't recognize that the best people are developed by having the best parents. The parenthood is worth something. This idea that we have to have both parents working all the time, because that's what we'll have to support universal pre-K. And that not having a parent there to teach their kids daily is sad. You know, the stat is that there's only 5 million stay-at-home parents left. 5 million. Many of them are poor, but it's just 5 million. That is about 1.5% of the population. Yep. And many, many more. It's many, many more. I want to say it's like 19 million single adult women or something like that. Just crazy amount of single parent homes. And these kids are missing out. I think so many of our problems we have today, you know, why we can be overruled by people like AOC and Trump, why we can just be, you know, carried by our passions, is because we haven't been civilized and we haven't been taught to be upstanding people. Okay? Going back to even George Washington. George Washington had his older brother. To George Washington, his older brother was like his dad. And that made the man that George Washington was. And I know for certain we would not have George Washington if we hadn't had for George Washington's brother. Now, is this true of every person? Well, Abraham Lincoln had a terrible father, a terrible, terrible, terrible father. And Abraham Lincoln was amazing. So it's not universally true, but it's more likely that you are stacking the deck against a kid when they don't have the full support of both parents playing an active and positive role in their life. This is common sense. We know this. In our very guts, in our hearts, in our souls, in our spirits, we know that this is how it's supposed to be. Okay? We know it. It's just, it's too scary to admit it. It's politically incorrect. There's too many single-parent households now. It's too, you know, you're just hurting people's feelings. Terry Crews here, he's willing to tell the truth. He's willing to stick up for dads. I'm impressed by it. I am impressed. You know, this is just another person out there in Hollywood that I don't agree with everything Terry Crews does. He's a little silly about the people that make fun of his sexual assault. He wants to go after them. But I mean, besides that, the standing up for dads is pretty gosh darn impressive. And it impresses me. That impresses me to no end. And then I'd like to lastly say, you know, before I move to my last section, somewhat important news for you guys here. I'd like to say thank you to those male role models in my life. Thank you to my grandpa Hendrickson. Thank you to Robert, my good friend and partner on this podcast. And, you know, thank you to my good friend Craig. He was another big one. I've had several people, men, that changed my life completely. And I wouldn't be the man I am today, that shell of a man. I wouldn't even be the shell if it wasn't for their support and teaching. And I'm telling you, I'm really grateful. So very. right. So what do I want to go with? I want to thank you all that's kept me in your prayers, that have been trying to support me in my health. I appreciate that. I don't want to go into this too much, but I don't know how much longer I'm going to be with you guys. No, I'm not planning on killing myself or anything crazy like that. No, it looks like so the last time I talked to you, I had a new doctor, pain clinic doctor, that may have been able to prescribe the medication I needed, opioids, for my pain, because what I have just doesn't even close to cut it. Okay, I'm almost in pain all the time, and very rarely does my pain go anything near or below a 3. I'm usually at a 4 and a 5. My days, it's a 6 or 7, and my days are the 6 and 7. It's horrific. It's awful. Dr. C, it looked like she might be the one that could at least find some kind of pain treatment for me that works. Unfortunately, her hands are tied. It is, as I've talked about before with you guys, and when I've talked with family and friends and Robert in private, is that because of the 2016 CDC guidelines and our overactive law enforcement system, they are going after any and all doctors that prescribe opioids, in particular, all the doctors that have the chronic pain patients. Dr. C, within the week between our 2 visits, had 2 DEA agents visit her, one from Sioux Falls and one from Rapid City. And they went through all her paperwork, and they left her with brochures and pages, and they with strong wording, threats. They were threats, essentially. Legal, but threats nonetheless. And they're saying, in fact, the literature says this, that you should I'm trying to look at what's the terminology. It was something like this. It was like you may treat chronic patients with non-pharmacological methods. Essentially, they're saying non-pharmacological. Yeah, you can't use medicine. Happy thoughts, yoga, exercise, even acupuncture. All the nice, happy thoughts. This is ridiculous. So I don't know how long I'm going to be with you guys. Look, the science shows that you can only live with intractable pain, which is like super chronic pain. It's very high. It's high levels of pain. You can only live with intractable pain, not receiving treatment for so long. You'll have a stroke, or you'll have a heart attack, and you'll die. Or some people they have a mental breakdown and they kill themselves. That one's not very likely. I have no plans to doing that. No ideations or anything. I just don't know how long I can keep going. So if I do pass away, do I have faith that there's something on the other side? I kind of have to, but I do. I've met too many people who are special to me to know that their lights were just snuffed out and that was it. To believe that, no way. There's got to be a plan. There's got to be a point to all of this. That's where you rely on your faith. I rely on my faith. This story kind of bolsters it. So this is from CBS Pittsburgh, and it's about this study about hospice patients. So in Pittsburgh, I'll just read the first little 2 cents byline here. Death is one of the mysteries of life, but the dreams of patients at Hospice Buffalo, New York State, are revealing something incredible about the process of dying. Dr. Christopher Kerr and his team have been documenting dreams of visions of dying patients for years. They found that dreams are often comforting and make death look less scary. And here's the crazy thing, guys. They are finding that patients are having dreams like this 80% of the time. He said in 10 years, his team have documented 14,000 cases. 80% of his patients at this hospice are reporting dreams or visions. And these dreams and visions are comforting. Like a loved one will be there. Here's an example. Horace says, my wife all of a sudden appeared to me. Another one, a woman named Jean, described, I remember seeing every picture of their face. I mean, I knew it was my mom and my dad and my uncle and my brother-in-law. And it felt good. It felt good to see all these people. Maggie, who dreamt about her sister who had passed away before her, said, Beth, you got to stay with me. I'm all alone. Please stay with me. She says, I can't. Not now. But then her sister gives her a message. She says, soon we'll be back. We'll be back together. When Dr. Kerr started this out, he did not believe what he was finding. He was a chief medical officer at Hospice Buffalo. He was newly starting out. But something changed his mind. A certain patient, here's the story, and I'll just read from it. I walked in, and the nurse didn't even look up, and she said, no, he's dying. I said, why are you saying that? She said, well, he's seeing his deceased mother. And I was like, yeah, right. Dr. Kerr was skeptical. But over time, he's been proven wrong over and over again. Quoting the doctor, everybody but me was able to prognosticate death in part based on what people were seeing or experiencing. Dr. Kerr says doctors, they just aren't prepared to deal with these things. But after studying them, he believes these dreams are therapeutic. Instead of having this fear of death, it almost transcends the fear of death to something bigger. It's amazing. That is amazing. I love this story. It's pretty beautiful. I hope I live many more years. I want to have a wife and kids of my own. I want to have a career. I want to be an arrow in the quiver for the fight for freedom. I want to continue this podcast. I want to enjoy life. I joke, I want to see if I can live long enough for the 100th anniversary of Doctor Who. I don't know what's going to happen. Only God does. It's a little cliche, but we could all drop dead tomorrow. Only God knows the timetable. But yeah, that is where I'm at. So, if you or a loved one are struggling with this, you're not alone. And have faith. The light that's in our life, the people that you meet, that just can't go. That's one of the law of conservation of energy and matter, right? Well, that was my heartfelt ending. And I hope you appreciate it. I appreciate you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast and support me. Please be sure to check us out on Minds.com, Facebook.com, and Twitter.com. In Facebook and Minds.com is Happy Warrior Pete. We're gonna be verified on Minds.com later this week. That's exciting. And yeah, that's good stuff there. Be sure also to recommend this to your friends and family and write a review on iTunes if you would. This thing is going to grow. I know it's been a slow burn. I'm going to get some more people in, to get more interviews, grow the audience. Here's some interesting stories. I have a possible interview with Congressman Johnson, a friend of mine, a mutual acquaintance, said she would set that up. So I don't know if that'll happen, but I'll try for it. And I'm sure we can find plenty of interesting people to listen to and to learn from. Well, you guys have been great. As I like to always end these things, God bless you. God bless the troops and all those that sacrifice blood, sweat, and tears to protect our nation and defend our very freedoms, the rights that we have been given from God, our divine maker, and in whom knows what our future portends. Well, it's been great. You have a wonderful night, good week, and until next time, good night, America.
Thank you for listening. The Happy Warrior Podcast, hosted by Peter Vaughn Pischke, produced by Robert Mehling, a production of the Sioux Empire Podcast Network. Learn more at happy-warrior.net.
A production of the SiouxEmpire.com.